You wake face down in the mud of a lagoon at Nataruk, on the shore of what is now Lake Turkana, Kenya. Your last memory is the smell of fresh water and catfish. Now your fingers brush a stranger's skull, caved in by a single brutal blow. You are no warrior. You are a forager, one of 27 people killed here 10,000 years ago. The shock isn't the violence, it's the intimacy. This looks less like a battlefield than a massacre in a quiet place. Your own hands seem to have been bound. So why were you, a peaceful gatherer, worth killing at all? The light shifts, and you see it. The forensic sand tells the story. Stone blades, some of obsidian, a glassy volcanic rock not found at this camp, are still lodged in ribs and skulls. Obsidian was worth carrying, and its presence here hints that the attackers came from somewhere else, and came armed. Among the dead lies a woman in the last weeks of pregnancy, her body positioned in a way that suggests her hands were tied. This wasn't a shoving match. It was specific. The bindings on your wrists aren't rope. The material is long gone, and only the twisted pose of the bones is left to suggest them. The tally is chilling. At least 27 people, men, women, and children, and of the skeletons intact enough to read, most died violently. Blades driven into skulls, arrow and spear points buried in bone. This wasn't a skirmish. It was methodical, a grim assembly line with the dreadful efficiency of a corporate downsizing, just with more blood and fewer severance packages. A handful of researchers argue the wounds are more ambiguous than that, but most read Nataruk as our earliest evidence of one group slaughtering another. So the shock settles, colder than the obsidian. To find this camp, and to strike it whole, the attackers had to know it was here. Its paths, its people, its routines. Did someone point the way? We can't know, but the possibility gnaws that the first organized killing may have come not only from strangers over the ridge, but with the help of someone who already knew you. You walk the lakeshore, and the scale sinks in. These weren't only fighters. Among the dead are children, one barely more than a toddler, and the pregnant woman, her unborn child dying with her. Whatever this was, it drew no line between a grown man and an infant. This wasn't only about territory. To kill the children and the pregnant is to attack tomorrow itself. To erase not just a band of people, but everyone who would have come after them. Think of it, not merely beating a rival group, but ending its line. That is the darker signature of Nataruk. A community wasn't just driven off the land, it was struck out of the future tense. So the question mutates. If the aim was to wipe out the next generation, this was no raid that got out of hand. It looks planned, and planning needs knowledge. Where the camp was, when it was whole, who was inside it. Whether that knowledge came from patient scouting or from someone on the inside, we'll never prove. But it's the oldest shadow behind organized violence that the deadliest attacks are the ones somebody saw coming. But to weigh this, rewind. North up the Nile, to a place called Jebel Sahaba in what is now Sudan, and back perhaps 3,000 years earlier still. Here lies one of the oldest cemeteries we have ever found. Its bones also carry violence, but a different kind. Many of the wounds had healed, broken arms knitted, cracked ribs mended. People were hurt, again and again, and lived. These were people who buried their dead with care, in a proper cemetery, the graves ordered and deliberate. And yet the injuries pile up, so many, and so often healed, that researchers now think this community lived with recurring raids and feuds over generations. Violence here was chronic, but survivable. A nasty, endless neighborhood dispute, not an extinction. The proof is in the bone. One man carried a small flint point lodged inside his ribcage, and it had healed over. He lived on for months, maybe years, with a stranger's weapon wedged beside his lung, a walking testament to a conflict that didn't quite kill him. That was the old normal. Violence you survived. The massacre at Nataruk is something else. A chilling escalation. Not a brawl anyone walks away from. Not a wound that heals. It's the difference between a fight and a policy. And the older, survivable violence makes the later horror sharper. These people already knew another way to live. They chose this instead. So the question becomes a ticking clock in the dark. What changed? What single, rotten idea turned the shared bowl into a memory, and the tool in your hand into a weapon meant only for the person on the far side of the ridge? So you stand there, holding a sharpened flint. It's a good tool. Yesterday you used it to scrape a hide, but now you're not looking at a deer. You're looking at a man from the other side of the ridge. He has the same tools, the same needs. Survival isn't the issue. The shared bowl was always an option. This is something else. The Jebel Sahaba cemetery holds around 60 people, and nearly half of them bear the marks of violence. Here's the detail that chills. Many of the stone points weren't in the bone at all. They were scattered in the earth around the bodies. Arrows and darts that missed, or passed clean through. These people weren't only trading blows up close. Some were shot at, from a distance, as they moved. Killing had become something you could do to a person you never even touched. That's the birth of the first rule of war. It's not about what is. It's about what might be. Your hunger is present. His future threat is a fiction. But your new, terrible imagination makes that fiction feel more real than the ground under your feet. You strike down a story you've written for him. It's the original sin of strategy, and it took a cognitive leap we're still cursed by today. The ability to trade a real person for a phantom. So the flint in your hand hesitates between tool and weapon. The choice is made not by your stomach, but by a dark, blooming fear in your mind. You won't share. You'll strike first. And with that, you invent a future in which he would have done the same to you. A neat, self-fulfilling prophecy. The real mystery isn't why they fought. It's how they ever managed to stop, even for a moment. So you stand at the cemetery of Jebel Sahaba, around 60 graves, the points still lodged in the bones. But look closer. The real weapon wasn't the spear. It was the thought. The first cognitive poison. They are not us. This wasn't simply starving people fighting over a carcass. The climate along the Nile was shifting, squeezing more people into fewer good places. That's the textbook stressor, and it's real enough. But the bones tell a darker, more modern story too. These killers had time to plan, to arm themselves, to choose a place and a moment. That looks like premeditation, 13,000 years ago. They didn't just meet an enemy, they decided who the enemy would be. The inheritance is written in the smallest graves. Victims shot more than once, from behind. Blows delivered after the person was already down. It's overkill, and overkill is personal. It's the birth of a terrible idea, that safety lies in wiping out a threat before it can act. Sound familiar? It's the same broken arithmetic that runs from office politics to geopolitics. So the chilling truth of this first war is its legacy. The problem was never the spear. It was the mind that invented a reason for the spear. They stopped, now and then, long enough to bury their dead. But the idea, once born, never dies. It waits for the right pressure, the right whisper of us versus them, to demand its next offering. You carry a piece of that graveyard in your own skull. The real question is what you do with it.